Who would like more joy this year? In the right place. We've started a series, More Joy. Not just more success. There's self-help groups that you can go to for that. More joy. More joy, something that carries us through the ups and the downs. And no one is more qualified to tell us about this than the man who would, in prison, writes a letter filled with joy. Paul, writing to the people of Philippians. And all through these next 3 months, we'll be looking at how he found that joy, how he shared that joy, and how that joy can be ours. Something that will not only take us through the good and bad times, but that kind of joy that will overflow on all the people around us as we begin this new year. So I'm glad you're with us to worship today, and may we be blessed by God with more joy than when we walked in. Last week, Pastor Dave kicked us off by talking about the context of this story, what happened when Paul went to Philippi, and what he said was that Paul found more joy when he saw how God uses unusual suspects to carry out his plans. Now, this is not that surprising for those of us who know Gary Jensen. I mean, enough said. God uses unusual suspects. People like Paul himself, a persecutor of the church. Lydia, a woman, probably widowed, to be the deaconess of the first church of Philippi. A jailer who had jailed Paul, becoming one of the first to not only be baptized himself, but his whole household. Paul gets the joy in seeing how God takes regular people, unusual suspects, and turns them into God's great ministers and ambassadors and healers and teachers and lovers, which means most likely he is using you, wants to use you, will use you. In some ways, you might think I'm a usual suspect, right? He's a pastor. And you would think that to some degree if you knew my upbringing was right within the Lutheran Church. From day one, baptized, raised, and never left. Except for a few of those fraternity party weekends in college. Well, maybe more than a few, But the question, unusual suspects, is if I had been the usual suspect, then this service would be a lot like the 11:30 service that will follow. Because that's the service I grew up on as a good Lutheran boy. Starting with the Red Book, anybody? Anybody? And moving on to that modern green hymnal. Yeah. And so this picture kind of tells you how God took me from being a usual suspect and made me sort of an unusual one. This is a picture of me and my mission church, and it sort of typified what God did with me. He took me with my robes and my stole and challenged me to become the pastor of disaster with the black Stratocaster. Yeah, I broke way out of my usual zone for God when I was asked to start a new church in a community where there already was a Lutheran church, and we were looking to reach the seekers, the next generation. And boy, did we have some adventures trying to do that, doing that, learning from that. God can take a Lutheran choir boy and help him form a rock band. In fact, we were a band before we were a church. And there were some Sundays that were more in the band than in the church. God can take any of us and do whatever He needs to do with us, using us to do His will and His work. So we want to walk with Paul through the next phase, and if you want to use the Bibles that are in front of you, the black covered Bibles, we're going to be on page 1072, chapter 1, verse 3. 1072, Philippians. And since we're going to be doing text studies basically for the next 3 months, feel free to bring your home Bible if you'd rather. And also remember that in the back of the bulletin there is some space for writing notes if you'd like to, or bring your own Bible and write the notes right in. It's okay, you can do that. Page 1072, verse 3. I thank my God every time I remember you in all my prayers for all of you. I always pray with joy because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now. Being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. It is right for me to feel this way about all of you, since I have you in my heart. And whether I am in chains or defending and confirming the gospel, all of you share in God's grace with me. God can testify how I long for all of you with the affection of Christ Jesus. And this is my prayer, that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight, so that you may be able to discern what is best and may be pure and blameless for the day of Christ, filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ, to the glory and praise of God. Now I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that what has happened to me has actually served to advance the gospel. As a result, it has become clear throughout the whole palace guard and to everyone else that I am in chains for Christ. And because of my chains, most of the brothers and sisters have become confident in the Lord and dare all the more to proclaim the gospel without fear. Paul finds more joy in his friendship with the Philippians. It truly was a friendship, a partnership in the gospel in ways that his other churches really can't compare. Poor Paul, wherever he went along the way, he found opposition, but not in Philippi. In Philippi, he found friends, partners, people willing to take this strange but good news and share it in their community and eventually with us. From the beginning, the moment he met Lydia, the church began on a good note, and it just stayed there from then on. A beautiful song of joy to the world. I was thinking about beginnings and how wonderful it is when you're blessed with not only good beginnings in the faith, but steps along the way that keep helping you move along. Friendships in the faith, partnerships that help you continue in your walk of faith. I was looking back from my own perspective because that's what Paul's doing, and looking back and saying, gosh, where would I be without those pastors in my life? Pastor Hagen, who in the pulpit was very traditional, but outside was kind of a hippie. Got to remember where I come from. Or Pastor Rothar, stern as could be, but the one that said to me when I was thinking about colleges, go to a Lutheran school. And I think if he hadn't, I might not have. I don't know where my path would have taken me. I think of the Sunday school teachers, especially the one when every time I would come back to visit, she, with little lady bent over, would come up to me and she would say, oh, I taught you in 3rd grade, and you were a good student even then. So proud to know that somebody she taught had become a pastor, and I was so grateful. I think of the camp counselors I had and the one I became. I think of the teachers all along the way who were partners in bringing me to where I needed to go. I think of the bishops and the synod staff members, the colleagues I've had and have now, the church leaders I've been blessed to work with and work with now. And I think, it just brings joy to my heart. The friendship in the gospel that I've had from so many people. And I can look back and say, God's hand was in it, surrounding me constantly, and I hope allowing me to give in return. One of the most enjoyable partnerships in the gospel that I've had since I've come to Advent is the partnership in the gospel I've had with Sally Whitney. We've had some interesting times, Sally. Sally's the director of our early childhood school. She's been here a while. I met Sally when I first came to visit Advent 30-some years ago. She was a teenager then. So was I. I'm thankful for how God took Sally, molding and shaping her because she was willing and ready to become an outstanding director for us all these years. And someone who not only handled the business with absolute diligence and commitment, but just underneath everything was her beating heart for each one of those kids. For each one of those kids. I never heard her say, ever, that's a bad kid. Because for Sally Whitney, there's no such thing. They're all God's children. And I thank God for the partnership we have been blessed with Sally, and I hope you do as well. It brings me more joy, not to say goodbye to Sally as she retires, but to look at those days and those years and know how God used her, the partnership that we got to share with her, and the friendship that we developed. Thank you, Sally, and we'll thank you a little bit later too. I was thinking about a friend from my mission church that reminded me of that as well. In this picture, you see him standing off to my left. That's Gary Bradley. Gary Bradley came to our church dragged to our church kicking and screaming, I should say, by his wife, probably the 6th or 7th week that we started. After the service was over, he came up and said, "Do you need another guitar player?" Which I tried not to be offended by. I said, "Yeah." And Gary joined the band, and then Gary led the band. And then Gary created our rehearsal space in the basement of his house since we had no church to rehearse in. And Gary did the work every week of 2 services, picking songs and editing and all the stuff that was needed to be done for 0 pay. And has done so since I left 13 years ago. Which means for over 24 years, Gary Bradley has been an unpaid praise band leader. But what's more, I just saw this in Facebook. Not only is he still playing at the church that we started together, in the afternoon he's playing at another mission church every week. This is the guy who played mostly in bars, and it showed. Until he found the joy of the Lord. A partners like Sally and Gary. Brings you so much joy. Paul goes on to say that he has more joy because he's confident that he who began a good work in you will carry it to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. In other words, God doesn't just get things started. God keeps going with us. He keeps going with us. And we keep growing because of him. There's a confidence that Paul has. There's a kind of confidence that we lose all too often. We lose it. We think that we're going somewhere, and then we see all these setbacks. It's true. There are setbacks in our lives every day in relationships, in work, setbacks for our nation, setbacks for the world. We think we're going somewhere, and then it's 1 step forward and 2 steps back. But watch the arc of God's history. God's history is not based on our perception. The arc of God's history is like this. It just keeps going up. It does. You have to take a moment. You have to take some time and look and say truly, Look at the high points of your life, and don't they just get higher and higher and higher? They do. The joy comes not from forgetting the bad things in our life, but noticing that God continues in miraculous ways to keep moving us forward, higher, to greater purpose. Paul experienced this. He saw that God was doing this in his life. That you could draw, when you take those points of blessing, you could draw a line, and the line would only go up. And that's the confidence that we need to have as we begin a new year. Not that it can only go up from here. That is one way to look at it. But that it will go up from here. Our faith will grow. Our relationships will be blessed. God has a plan for us, and God's plan is moving forward, up, higher and higher. There is joy in having that confidence. If you don't have it, talk to some faithful elder, and they will tell you it just keeps getting better and better. Yesterday we let go Jim Williamson, who almost made it to 67 years of marriage to be. She would tell you, it started good, and it got better and better and better. It did. It will. Trust Him. Find more joy in that confidence and that hope. Paul says that we have more joy. He has more joy because the Philippians have shared in his struggles. And I think that is such an important aspect of joy. It's not something we experience alone. So much of our ethos in this country is about individual happiness, individual success, individual achievement. And yet if you look back in life, the moments that are dearest to you are very likely be the times when you were going through some difficulties and people circled you, came around you, blessed you, loved you. Will we look at our successes? Will we look at our achievements and say that's what life is all about? Or will we say, no, what life is all about is that time we all put our shoulders together and made it happen? You know how much I love Haiti, and I know how much Advent loves Haiti. Oh, we have been there with Haiti for over 25 years now. Their school there, buildings there, a health center now in Haiti, because Advent loves Haiti and wants to not avoid the struggle, but share in the struggle of Haiti. And I would say for each one of us who've had an opportunity to share in that struggle, we would say we cherish the struggle. We are blessed by it. I'm lucky because I get to go. I get to go, and some of you have gone as well, but for the rest of us, you should know they appreciate that we're sharing in that struggle. I was rereading some letters that were sent to us to thank our sponsors for their support, to hear the kids saying, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't be in school. And they are right. If it weren't for you, they wouldn't be in school. I've been to the villages. They would be sitting in the village doing nothing, learning nothing, with absolutely no chance of improving their lives. But because we share in their struggle, they have hope. It's been 8 years and 2 days since the tragic earthquake hit Haiti, taking over 200,000 lives. I was just looking at pictures yesterday of the mass burial sites that we visited several years later. What a tragedy. And the world poured out its love for Haiti and shared in the struggle. But as so often happens, other things occur. Other tragedies take our mind, and we have to pay attention to others as well. But Haiti appreciates truly appreciates what we've done. And they've taken every stick and stone that they can to rebuild. That's what I'm constantly amazed by. We would be so discouraged. They are fierce. They're going to make a better life for themselves. And we can share in that struggle. We do share in that struggle. We are educating children who will change Haiti. We're making sure that they get through that education with good health. And we're not done yet. I'm thankful for the work by Freedom Challenge doing the same things. For those of you supporting Boca Helping Hands, wherever we can share in the struggle, you know there's more joy. There's more joy. I love going on vacation, but there's more joy on a mission trip than any vacation. It's just the way it is. Paul concludes this letter by saying that there's more joy for him as he watches their love grow, abound. And isn't that true? Some of us have reached a point where we're watching kids grow. And there's nothing more joyful than watching kids move forward in life, achieve, grow, gain faith, hope, and love. I want to talk briefly about a young woman who despite some setbacks, was supported and encouraged, and what joy I found in seeing what God had done with her. Her name is Maya Shankar. Maya was a child prodigy, basically, on the violin. And I want to watch her play a little as I speak. She picked up the violin and found great joy in it, and was one of those kids that didn't mind putting the hours and hours of practice in. She became so proficient that they really couldn't find a teacher for her. Her mama, an immigrant from India, didn't really know what to do, but she'd heard about this place called Juilliard. So one day she took her daughter without an appointment, walked right into Juilliard and said, "I want my daughter to have an audition. I want my daughter to be heard." She was 9 years old. After her audition, she was enrolled and began getting instruction not only from the great teachers of Juilliard, but she was taken on as a personal student of Itzhak Perlman. When she was 15 years old and the career was looking so very promising, a tragedy occurred. As she was practicing a piece, a tendon in her pinky was damaged. And for a violinist, that's serious. Itzhak Perlman, to keep her going, agreed to teach her bowing with the hand that could work for another year so she wouldn't give up. One of the greatest violinists in the world spent an hour with the girl each week just practicing bowing. But her finger didn't improve enough for her to continue her career. And one would have thought that would be quite a blow at 15 when you think your whole career is ahead of you. But there was something that Maya had that a lot of us wish we had at times in our lives. She was surrounded by wonderful people. Her mom, the one who dragged her into Juilliard, wouldn't let her give up. He pointed her in another direction entirely, in the academics pursuit that she had not focused on very much. She became interested in behavioral sciences. Pretty interested, I guess, because she got an undergraduate degree at Yale, a PhD at Oxford on a Rhodes Scholarship, and then a postdoctoral program at Stanford. You may have heard of those places. And then she became, at the bequest of President Barack Obama, the senior advisor at the White House Office of Science and Technology. When she was interviewed about how she did it, she really basically said, "I didn't. Everyone around me kept me going." Her mother's brash belief in her, her father's groundedness and sense of humor. Itzhak Perlman, who never gave up on her. Teachers that came alongside her and helped her explore what she was interested in so that she could achieve a whole nother field of success. Well, it's nice having those people around you. I'm sure, Sally, you're thankful for the wonderful staff and teachers that have surrounded you. I know we are, and we're so grateful that although you are moving on, that we have those wonderful people to continue. And that legacy, I know they will carry it through. Whoever becomes the new director will be blessed by a wonderful team of people. It's not an easy job. Doing ministry isn't easy at all. And however we can surround each other and encourage each other. Why, there is more joy to be found in watching a student that you've taught achieve, a child that you've raised serve. What joy we can find in knowing that that next generation and the next will themselves know the joy of the Lord. Paul, in prison, finds more joy. Friendships in the gospel. Confidence that God's plan is good. People willing to share in his struggle. People ready to cheer on. The abounding love that grows. More joy. I want to leave you with the purest joy that there is. I wouldn't say this was one of the kids from early childhood school, infant room, but it could be.